This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. Hugh Hefner has passed away, one of the many men responsible for the destruction of our homes, our society, our culture. But I wanted to talk about it because a lot of people don't understand who backed Playboy, who was behind Playboy, Hugh Hefner's connections and roots in the CIA, people he's related to, and how he was an MK Ultra handler and programmer for the CIA, creating sex slaves, using a lot of these women, selling a lot of these women off. $1 billion industry, and of course they let you know now he was left with nothing when he passed. Well, unless he repented and found Jesus Christ, he had nothing while he was here. And as Hugh Hefner passes, one of the things most people will talk about is, oh, Playboy, and they don't realize that the lust in our current society, the psychological warfare that we see going on through the television set with nudity and how they're constantly making men foam at the mouth for women and vice versa. Now men lusting for men, unfortunately. That's how sick this world and depraved this world has become. Nonetheless, Playboy, which was somewhat of a looked at as just a nudity magazine, was the beginning of allowing these things to start happening. This was the CIA behind it, funding it. It was used as a front. They were creating sex slaves and sex kittens, beta kittens, through the Playboy Mansion. But did you know some interesting facts about Hugh Hefner? That he's actually related and a cousin to George Bush, to the Bush family, as well as the Carys. Remember when Bush and Kerry pretended to run against each other, fellow bonesmen? Everybody ate that up and believed it, huh? Oh, they don't like one another. Couldn't be better buddies. Just shows you the left-right is nothing but a fraud, nothing but a front. But Hefner related to Bush. Now, most of us are well aware that George Bush Sr. was behind, really, the formation of the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, which is used to smuggle, launder drugs, narcotics, but more importantly for them, it's used as a front for sex trafficking of children, as I've covered before and documented and discussed in detail, specifically back last year during the whole Pizzagate stuff, about how the CIA has been nothing but a front for all of these things that we would consider criminal activity. But of course they're glorified, and it was glorified, and the seeds were planted even in the 70s in Playboy magazine, because many times Playboy would do interviews with people such as William Colby, a former director of the CIA. Playboy would interview CIA directors, all different, people who were associated with the CIA would do interviews for Playboy. And that's because the CIA funded Playboy. Hefner's job was to use MK Ultra techniques to create sex slaves, to brainwash the masses, to also poison our society and our culture with the depravity that we see now, which is considered normal. He was one of the people planting those seeds, but he's nothing more than a Zionist, Ashkenazi Jew, a fake Jew, who was working and taking his orders from people like George Bush. And you could see him rubbing arms here with people like Bill Cosby, other known sex offenders and abusers. Friends, of course, with the likes of Henry Kissinger. You could even see him here with Bruce Jenner, also known as Caitlyn, for anyone out there that's not aware. Yes, that is Caitlyn Jenner as Bruce Jenner. And you can see the pyramid on the wall during this get-together, this party that they're having here. Hefner was nothing more than a Zionist Freemason puppet for the elites. But see, people don't think like that. They think, well, this guy just came up with this idea. And of course, he's labeled as what? A philanthropist, right? Remember, they always use that word. Philanthropy is always associated with the elites. They're philanthropists because we're automatically supposed to believe that they're great people. They're charitable. They give to charity. They donate. They try to help as many people as possible. It's all a front. It's all a charade. And they've created this illusion in society that we all should strive to be like Hugh Hefner, right? That's the illusion of the last 50 years surrounding Playboy and Hugh Hefner. He's walking around in his bathrobe, all these women. He's got three girlfriends at once, and it's just unbelievable how in your face it is. And people can't see that, they were creating Manchurian candidates through the Playboy Mansion, using it as a front for these things. And what they would do is, they would take some of these females at a young age, they would program them, they would have them operate as, drug traffickers or sex slaves, because that's how the CIA operates. They use these organizations as fronts, right? Then they glorify it in the press. So we hear about Playboy, we're supposed to be gushing and drooling and saying, wow, Hugh Hefner, he lived the American dream, right? He started something from nothing. We're supposed to believe he just started this. He just said, wouldn't it be crazy? Let's start a magazine with nude girls in it. And it would grow and expand and become this and have this mansion where people just parade around and party and have orgies and all sorts of weird things go on. And nobody questions it. Now it's glorified. It's glorified in our culture. All you hear about now after his death is how amazing he was, how great it was. You see, that's why, and how they get away with creating fronts like this. They create a front, they create an organization, call it a magazine. Oh, it's $1 billion industry. You know how much money Playboy made through trafficking? Billions of dollars. That's where they made their money. Through selling these women, through using them as sex slaves. It's not just children that they use as sex slaves, they use women. And I'm sure he had an involvement and a tie-in to children as well. Of course, they all do. Hugh Hefner Mishpucha, who I'm sure was a strong follower and advocate of the Talmud. But anybody who's rubbing shoulders with the people he was rubbing shoulders with, the Kissingers of the world, all of these elites, you see how they stick together? You see how they're related to one another? You think it's a coincidence that he's a cousin to the Bushes? And I don't want to hear, well, he's not the first cousin. He could be a second or a third or a fourth cousin, because people just always try to, devalue stories like this or relations to people and how all these people are connected by saying, well, we're all connected in some way. You, the listener, and me are connected in some way, right? Because everything goes back to the garden, so we're all technically related. Ah, ha, ha, ha. That's how they deflect and take attention away from this stuff. This power structure, this control structure, which has been going on for a long period of time. Kings and queens keeping bloodlines. It still exists. But see, we live under the illusion that this is a republic and a free society, that these people are elected, that they're not bloodlined in. And that's not correct. They are bloodlined in. They are selected, not elected. And what Hefner did with his time here on Earth is not only did he, I can't even imagine some of the darker stuff that people don't know about that he's done, even though I've heard testimonies from people inside that mansion of what a disgusting, depraved human being he was. Not even talking about the trafficking, but just talking about the morals and the breaking down of family, of morality in society. When you look at today, how people are just lusting over everyone and gushing. That's because seeds were planted here with Playboy. That's where it started from. That's why now, women can pretty much walk around wearing thongs out in public and nobody would blink, because it desensitized people to all this stuff through Playboy. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, people look at Hugh and they just go, oh, he's just some old man in a robe. What a great story. How funny, how great. And he plays it off as if, that's all he is just some innocent old man. Some guy who just puts pictures of nude girls in a magazine. Not even close. Not even close. Like I said, the CIA funded and bankrolled Playboy for its entire existence. They were behind it. It was used as a front and a cover to create Manchurian candidates, sex slaves, you name it. And Hefner was one of the people who was a programmer and a handler of these victims. And he's been rubbing shoulders with the elites his entire life. And it's not because he just got there, because he came up with a great, crazy idea. Take a look at the guy. All you need to know is in the face, okay, for starters. You could just look and you know what bloodline he's related to. And they're all related to one another. It's not just him related to the Bushes, or is that supposed to be a coincidence that George Bush Sr., who was really behind the fronting of the CIA and the structuring of it, nah, he would never use his buddy who's around the same age, Hugh, to create this organization as a front. Hugh didn't have any ties to CIA. He was a CIA operative, and the whole thing was a front. That's all it ever was. But think about that. If you tell people that, you see how it works and mind control works? Go tell somebody that Playboy was a CIA front. They'll laugh in your face. They'll think you're insane. Oh, CIA front, Playboy. So why do you think they pick things like this to do? And how easy of an opportunity was that? You know, they're pretty much flat out telling you, if you're awake and aware, that they're creating mind control slaves. Look at the women who come and go out of that place. Okay with four 20-year-olds dating an 80-year-old, 90-year-old, all sharing him. Can't see that these people are under serious mind control. Can't see that this guy is a handler of so many people. It's pretty easy to see when you're awake. But try telling somebody that there's a relation between Playboy and the CIA, and they'll laugh at you. That's why they create this image in people's minds of what this company is, what this organization is. And they use those as fronts. And behind the door, behind closed doors, all of this stuff is going on. Trafficking, drug trade, all of it. Creating Manchurian candidates, creating sex slaves, creating, whatever they want through MKUltra. Breaking people's minds down. Creating as many altars as they can in someone's mind. And if you think about it from that perspective, doesn't it make more sense that they would use something as Playboy? Because to me, when I think about it, it makes perfect sense. But the masses out there would never hear it. They'd have nothing to do with it. They'll just go, wow, he was great. He lived the American dream. Yep, just more words that make no sense. The American dream, just things that people regurgitate. Sayings that they come up with that keep people controlled and consumed by this society and this matrix. So Hugh Hefner allegedly passes away at the age of 91. His legacy, nothing to be proud of. Hope he wasn't too fond of the stuff he stored up here on earth, because it's all meaningless now. Remember, folks, the only way to salvation is through Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone. I thank you for listening to today's show. God bless all of you and your families.